Welcome to Chapter 10, Visualizations with Plotly. So we've just begun a new part of the course and opened up notebook number 10. This is part 1, Intro to Plotly. So Plotly is a Python library and creates interactive data visualizations for the web. It is an enormous library, so covering all of its details is out of scope for this course. In fact, we could use a dozen or more chapters to cover every single type of plot that is possible within the Plotly library. Now that's not our goal for this chapter. What our goal is to provide a single straightforward approach to using Plotly, and with this approach you'll be able to create many different types of plots. You'll learn how Plotly thinks, and then you'll also learn how to discover how to create different types of plots and how to fine-tune them as well. So obviously we will be creating the plots that will be part of our dashboard, but with creating these plots, you'll see how that you can easily create many other types of plots in the Plotly library as well. So keep this in mind, these goals, as we're going through this particular chapter on Plotly. All right, so in a later chapter, we're going to be covering the Dash library, and the Dash library is very similar to the Plotly library, but is used to create the dashboard itself. So let me talk about some differences between Plotly and Dash. They are very similar. Both are created by a company called Plotly. Both have a free and open source version, and also an enterprise version with some extra features. Now, the Plotly library creates visualizations as independent HTML and JavaScript files that can be embedded on any page. So once you create a graph, you can put it on any web page that you want. The Dash library does not create the visualizations themselves, but creates and runs the entire dashboard application. So it has tools such as data tables, tabs, drop-downs, radio buttons, many more widgets, and importantly, you can obviously add the Plotly visualizations that you create into a Dash application. All right, so let's get started here, and before we do any Plotly, we're just going to read in some of the data. So here is all of the data that we just, this is all of the data from all areas for all dates up to the last date that we have available. So we're going to just work with one particular area, Texas. So from this all data set, we're just going to look at all dates from Texas. And then we'll just get the summary table, which is the most current days data. Okay, so that's the data, which we've already covered in great detail before. So here's the general steps to create a Plotly graph, and this is the process that we're going to use for all of our Plotly graphs. There are other ways to create Plotly graphs. I'm just showing you a single approach, and I believe it is a simple and intuitive approach. So step one is to create the figure with geo.figure or make subplots. So you'll see later make subplots makes multiple different plots. The figure geo.figure just creates one single plot, and you will assign that to a variable called fig. Step number two is we're going to add the trace. So a trace is just a term that Plotly uses for a type of plot, like a scatter plot is a trace, a bar plot is a trace. There are all sorts of different types of plots you can create. And the way we'll do that is with fig.add underscore and then the name of the trace. So like add underscore scatter, add underscore bar. So there are many different types of actual visualizations that you will create. And then we'll update the layout, which means like change things like the title, the x-axis, add annotations to the graph. And the way we do this is with fig.update underscore layout, or there's some other specific types of updates you can create, fig.update underscore and that particular name. So those are the three steps we're going to create, or we're going to do: create the figure, add the trace, and then update the layout. So we'll do those on most of the plots that we create in this chapter. Okay, so let's go ahead and just create this figure object. This is step one. The way to do this, you have to import this particular module in Plotly called graph objects and alias it as geo. So this is convention done in the documentation. So we'll have geo. We'll create the figure, just an empty figure, by calling by instantiating this figure class, so geo.figure, and we'll save the instance to a variable name called fig. So we'll do this for all our plots. So running this, and you have to put fig as the last line of the cell to see the actual figure in the notebook, or else you will not be able to see it. So we just have an empty figure over here. And you can see actually it is interactive already. It is not a static figure like Matplotlib. So by default, Matplotlib produces static, like PNG files, like image files. This is, JavaScript over here with HTML, CSS, and so there's not much interaction, of course, right now, but it's not a static figure. Okay, so that's step one. Step two will be adding a particular trace. So as I said, add underscore and then whatever the method is, whatever the type of trace is. So if you click on this link, we can look at the reference over here. So let me actually go ahead and click on the actual link. Okay, so on the left-hand side, you'll see all of the different types of traces, and you also see how to update the layout. But the beginning is the types of traces you can add: scatter, bar, pie, heat map, a contour plot, a box plot, violin. These are all the types of traces you can add, and you can click on specific ones, and then you can see some of the properties that you can change. So we'll talk about that in a second, but we're just going to create a simple trace over here. So with our data, we've been creating mostly line plots, and interestingly, there is no add underscore line method. There is no line trace, which is a bit surprising. And the way you create a line plot is actually with scatter. So it looks, it's a little confusing, I believe. But anyways, you can create a line plot with this add scatter, and you set this mode parameter to one of these three. So you can either just do a scatter plot if you set it to markers, just do a line plot if you want to just do the lines, or you can add the lines with the markers with lines plus markers like this. Okay, so here is we're just getting our data right now so we're going to extract them as series. So we're going to get the index, that's the dates. The Y values will be the values of the deaths here. We're going to create our figure. That's step one. Step two is to add the trace. So add scatter, and then give it X and Y, and then set the mode for this particular one. And when we run this, we get the number of deaths in Texas from the start all the way to the very last day that we have data. And actually, this is a prediction over here, and we'll turn that in a different color a little bit later. Okay, so that's a quick, we'll update the layout in the next section. So that'll be, completing step three. And we'll also cover, how to find what these parameters are as well. So we're not going to be in the dark about where to find these. Okay, so that is an introduction to Plotly with our three-step approach, and keeping in mind this goal right here.